I loved this question. I was actually talking about what it means to be high frequency to a group of people, but I was channeling, so I don't like fully remember what I said. But the question is, can you talk about the intersection of high frequency versus spiritual maturity?
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, oof. Okay, so in some ways I would say to truly be high frequency in the way I would describe it, or what I would strive for, you have to be spiritually mature. So there's a lot of people that think that their vibration is really high, and it's not, because they're not spiritually mature. But there are people who have a high vibration who are not spiritually mature. And this is where they will struggle. They will still struggle with manifestation. Like, you can be projecting out a frequency really strongly and like believe in a frequency really strongly. So that can make you kind of a magnet, I would say. But if you don't have the level of spiritual maturity that you need to fully kind of lock in the highest frequency, fully projected out, you're not going to get clear intuitive messages. Intuitive messages that come in, you're usually going to misinterpret. You're going to feel like there are things in your life that feel stuck or feel frustrating, like it's just not working. It often translates to like more a lack of 3D skills, I would say. And then that causes problems in people's lives. So there's going to be a block in what they can manifest, So, I mean, this is an easy conversation to have. I've had a lot of people I've worked with where, look, I tell people what I think, and if you're paying me, I'm like, I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing. You might not like it, but I've had a lot of conversations with people like, I'm doing all the work. I'm healing all my inner beliefs. And they are. But then I see how they interact with people in the world, and it's immature, or their mindset about things is immature. And so, our subconscious beliefs and our energy and our mindset is so complex. There's so many things, right? We can be really high frequency in certain areas of our lives. Like, we can be enjoying abundance and love, but then you look over here and this person is like super insecurely attached or super anxious or super avoidant, or you look at their communication style with people and how they show up in a room, how they expect everybody else to cater to them, to their feelings. And it's like princess energy, it's like there are those places of spiritual immaturity, and also how they react and respond to things that come in intuitively. Right? So like, you can be a high frequency person in a lot of ways and start attracting things in and then start to spiral. Or you can make intuitive downloads mean certain things like about the world around you that they don't really mean, So there's so many different parts of the spiritual maturity, I would say, that it's hard to just say one. But when you have that intersection point is like where you're limitless and where you're unstoppable. But you can also be like really high in the frequency side of things, but be spiritually immature, and it's still not going to fully click. And that's a lot of people's blocks. A lot of people in the spiritual space will do things to raise their vibration. And so they'll generally be really high frequency. They've done all this inner work, they're doing all this energy work, but there's just still things that they're holding on to that are immature, who are spiritually irresponsible. And so that's places often where they'll be acting out of ego, right? Or like needing to feel more important, or just, again, I think just what I consider to be very 3D skills about how you operate in the world and how you communicate with people and how you show up in a room and how emotionally aware you are of other people. So if you're by yourself a lot, it's easy to feel high frequency. And the second you get around people and you get irritated, you get triggered, like your vibration changes. So the intersection point is where you want to be. I think that spiritual maturity will bring you to being a high frequency, but if you're just on the path of being high vibrational, that won't necessarily bring you down the path of being spiritually mature. And that's why, when I'm teaching spiritual gifts and energy work, I teach it in a really specific way for a reason, because I'm trying to more go down the path of spiritual maturity for people. And people are like, no, I just want the skill, I just want this. And I'm like, but none of that matters if you don't have that level of maturity, because the universe is only going to give you what you can hold. And even with gifts, most people just want to turn their gifts on more. with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you're not energetically responsible, you're not gonna get that information. You're not gonna get that power, so to speak. So, and that's true with like, you know, for me with my psychic abilities, that's true with my energy healing abilities. Just the more you continue to mature, the more stuff comes on. But your soul isn't going to turn it online if you're going to be crazy with it. It's like, I'm not going to give you, you know, I don't know, a machine gun if you don't know how to use it. Like, if you're not responsible, absolutely not. So that's what I would say about that.
Can you talk a little bit more, just like in case people don't know, about like what it means to be maybe high frequency versus like raising your vibration? Like maybe in a quantum way.
I mean, that's the thing when people say things like that, I'm like, what do you mean though?
Right,
like we throw things out there like that, and that can mean like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So it's kind of like the person asking the question, I would be like, well, what do you mean by that exactly? And then I can respond to that. I guess within myself, like when I'm using those words, I'm talking about technically, like a high vibration, like raising your vibration, raising your frequency is like a very literal, like numbers, like you can measure it, you know. So when I'm doing energy work on people, I'll get a number, like of what their frequency is, like how many hertz. And so it's just a measurable thing, but I also don't expect everybody to use the definition I have. So I think a lot of people use that as just like feeling good, feeling better, feeling in flow, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, how else do you think people use it?
Well, no, I was thinking more technically. Yeah. Like even just the difference between like frequency and vibration. People have asked me that. Yeah. And
I mean, there's different layers to it, right? There's like your overall frequency, which you can look at as like a soul. You can look at that as the soul embodied in the human is another part of frequency. You can look at like what your frequency is versus like what your temperature is today in this moment, right? Like you're a mood ring. So those are kind of like two different layers going on, where you'll have like ebbs and flows within your frequency. Like if I'm a generally high frequency person, I could like go through something where my emotions are really low vibration, but also the way that I react and respond within that low vibrational feeling is going to affect how that affects my overall frequency. And my frequency can lower in a moment. That doesn't mean it can't rebound. Right. So there's kind of like your chronic frequency and then your acute frequency. And with, you know, vibration can also be the frequency, but it's like, where am I vibrating? What am I vibrating with? And so for me, typically when I'm thinking about that, it's much more of like an acute thing and a constantly changing thing. And a frequency is a more set thing within a certain range. But it's also kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would describe it too. I was just curious. I think it's also really interesting what you were talking about being able to hold a frequency. That helped me a lot in relating to other people. When you were telling me like certain people can meet me at a frequency and then they can't hold that. I had never thought about it that way before. And I think that that's really helpful for people that, you know, are empaths or are very high frequency. It's like, yes, like people can meet you and be in alignment with you, and that doesn't mean that they're gonna stay that way, especially long term.
We also have to get a little more discerning about what about each other is in alignment. Like, why am I in alignment with this person? And a lot of people will meet people and they're like, we're so resonant, blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, well, the piece of you that's resonant, is it a healthy piece? Is it an evolved piece? Or is it like
a wound?
And that's what happens to a lot of people. It's like, how did I end up with a narcissist? You know, how did I end up with an avoidant attachment? I'm like, because where you were resonating was like your anxious attachment was resonating with their avoidant attachment. You know, so we have to get a little bit more discerning. And when you first meet someone, it will seem like it's all the good parts, but it's not always. I mean, sometimes it is, you know, so we can be resonating with people on different levels like that too.